Welcome back. This is Today, and the South African rand took a huge knock following persistent power cuts, but it also was affected by the announcement made by the U.S. ambassador to South Africa about South Africa supplying Russia with weapons. The rand currently sits at around 19 rand 45 cents against the US dollar. On top of that, the unemployment data is expected to come out this week. To unpack this, we're joined by economist Professor Bonke Dumisa. Prof, thank you very much for joining us today for the economic week ahead. Let's maybe start by reflecting on the rand and the knock that we saw. Obviously, the mandate of the Reserve Bank is to protect the value of the currency. So when we look at the weakness of the rand, we can expect that the Reserve Bank may continue to be aggressive with interest rate hikes come the 26th of May.
Well, it is really sad what happened last week. South Africa was deliberately ambushed by the US ambassador, and the rand, as you've already said, took a very major knock. It moved from 1887 on Thursday to over 1951 by Friday against the US dollar. The same thing happened with the pound. It moved from about 23.82 on Thursday to over 24.14 on Friday. And lastly, with the euro, it moved from about 20.72 on Thursday to over 21 rands 3 cents against the euro. That was really bad, because what the US ambassador did, it was deliberate, and it was really meant to shake the South African markets, and the South African markets did really panic. So what do we expect to happen from now? Yes, he was called by the Minister of International Relations. He was demarched. It was the first time I heard that word, and they told him exactly where to jump. But the damage has already been done, and we are going to live with this weakened rand maybe for the better part of this week. But we do expect it to be better, because you must remember, when you mentioned what weakened the rand, initially it was the speculation about the load shedding. When we are at stage 6 and no one knows what is going to happen, and people are speculating, here others talking about stage 16, etc. So people were saying, because we are now entering the winter season, then it is going to be worse. That affected the rand, because load shedding does affect businesses. But when the US ambassador came with all those things, then the rand just tumbled significantly, and it will take some time for it will not go back to where it was on Thursday, but at least it can go back to where it was earlier on Friday. And the markets also were affected by that one. You started hearing a lot of speculations about certain businesses simply saying they will leave South Africa, which was really a question of sensationalism then. So I do agree with Professor Siphamandla Zondi that what the US did on Friday was deliberate. It was meant to intimidate South Africa into supporting Ukraine, which is unacceptable for any country to say, because they've got more money, then they can dictate to other countries what decisions they must make. But that is political analysis. I'm talking about the economy here. So this created economic uncertainty about South Africa, and that is what many businesses and investors do not like.
Yeah, and of course, it's adding a lot of inflationary pressure that we don't need as a country at the moment. And it's definitely going to hit businesses who are already struggling with operating costs when it comes to the unemployment data that we're going to be seeing coming out, Prof. The quarterly labor force survey. We have seen in the employment statistics that there were some jobs that were being created on a couple of consecutive quarters. But overall, the unemployment rate is set to remain bleak or elevated, if you will, when it's released on Tuesday.
Yes, on Tuesday, the 17th of March, we do expect the unemployment rates and unemployment statistics to be released. They figuratively, in terms of the figures that they may give, it may show that maybe it may be marginally lower, but no one really cares about that as it is now. But because the point is, when we look at our expanded definition of unemployment, the unemployment rates remain far higher than 42% or even 43%. But as I keep on saying here, this is a structural problem that needs a different type of intervention. So we can, under these circumstances, when we are having all these problems with load shedding for the past 9 months at least, then there's no way in which we can really realistically believe that unemployment is going to be better, especially because many jobs are also being lost during the load shedding. And when things are just like that, and our population growth, unfortunately, is not in line with our economic growth rate. So that is also what complicates issues. So we'll just keep on praying. But what worries me a lot, as you said about the repo rate, we do expect the governor of the Reserve Bank next week, not this coming week. Next week, the MPC will be meeting, and we expect the governor of the Reserve Bank to announce the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee. And we all know that the repo rate will be increased. The only question is by how much. I do believe that maybe they may increase the repo rate by only 25 basis points, but they may also increase it by 50 basis points. Why am I saying that? It is because we saw with the last inflation rate figures which were given that instead of the inflation rate going down below 7%, where it was 2 months earlier, it started going up again. And the Reserve Bank does not hesitate to say if the repo rate, if ever the inflation rate is far above their midpoint of the target inflation rate of 3 to 6%, then they will increase the repo rate. So they will increase. So the repo rate from next week, Thursday, it will definitely be at 8% or more. And that is going to affect the South Africans even worse, because we must remember that this weakening of the rand pushes up all the other costs, and we end up with the imported inflation, and that is what is destroying the country.
Of course, another issue that we have to contend with, and I suppose it's a culmination of everything you've just described to us, Prof, is retail sales will also be coming out this week. And they are a good indicator of the health of retailers and consumers. TFG, but one example, saying that they lost a lot of foot traffic, the Foschini Group, they lost a lot of foot traffic during load shedding as customers don't go back to the shopping mall when load shedding is is over. Once they've left, they've left. So load shedding having an impact on retailers not being able to sell whatever it is that they're selling, but also consumers dealing with high interest rates and really no longer having an appetite to spend money because they just don't have the money to spend. There's just no disposable income there. So just your sense of what these retail sales numbers will be showing us this week.
Personally, I do not believe that the retail sales figures will be far better than anything that we saw in February. You must remember that we saw the retail sales going down by 0.5 in February. And the March figures may be somehow better than that 0.5. But when people say they can see the retail sales going up by 2%, I do not know where they see that coming from, because as you say, consumers are not going to the shops, not because they're deciding to tighten the belts, but because they do not have the money. And many people are even losing houses and cars now. They're being repossessed because they cannot cope with the installments. So retail sales will definitely be down. Whether it's negative growth or just very low growth, I'm not sure. I don't want to speculate on that one, but they won't be good in any way. And until the whole load shedding thing is dealt with effectively.
And hopefully it will be dealt with. Prof, you mentioned it earlier, there are talks of levels, stage 16. I shudder at the thought of what that actually looks like. But thank you very much for your time this evening. That is Professor Bonke Dumisa reminding us that there are conversations around stage 16. And as long as we have issues of power cuts, as we have the severity over the last 9 months, we're going to see South Africa's economy continue to suffer.